At the recent PlayStation 5 event, Square Enix unveiled a teaser trailer for a new game, Project Athia, which is now in development for the PS5 and PC. The Japanese publisher has since revealed scant few details about the project, other than the usual marketing speak that describes it as a thrilling, story-led, action-packed adventure that's the culmination of Luminous Productions' philosophy to create a completely new and fresh gaming experience. Also, Gary Whitta, writer for Rogue One and the video game adaptation of The Walking Dead, recently announced he would be leading the writing team for the project. For some, it might appear as if this game and the studio behind its development appeared out of nowhere. However, the name Luminous has a history at Square Enix. It traces back to Luminous Studio, an in-house proprietary game engine first unveiled at E3 2012, when it was used to power a tech demo called Agni's Philosophy. This demo was meant to be a showpiece illustrating the potential of Luminous Studio and its impact on PS4 and Xbox One projects coming from Square Enix. Expectations were high. According to the head of the project, Yoshihisa Hashimoto, the goal of Luminous Studio was to realize CG caliber visuals in real time. Agni's Philosophy immediately garnered attention from fans and press alike for its radical shift in visual direction compared to the company's previous offerings. The video provided a refreshing new take on fantasy worlds, which was something sorely needed at the time. Perception of Square Enix's revered Final Fantasy franchise was at an all-time low after a string of major setbacks, courtesy of the prolonged and troubled development of Final Fantasy XIII, as well as the disastrous original release of Final Fantasy XIV Online. It's also important to point out that Luminous Studio's creation is intricately tied to Final Fantasy XV. Initially known as Final Fantasy Versus 13, it was originally intended to be part of a massive compilation of games in the Final Fantasy XIII universe, under the banner of Fabula Nova Crystallis. However, development of Versus 13 ran into numerous issues due to limitations with the Crystal Tools engine, the very same engine that powered Final Fantasy XIII and the original release of Final Fantasy XIV Online.
I can explain!
Crystal Tools was explicitly tailored to the specifications of Final Fantasy XIII, which was composed of mostly linear environments. In contrast, director Tetsuya Nomura envisioned Versus 13 as a game that would have massive open-world environments featuring real-time combat. Simply put, Crystal Tools couldn't handle the game, and development on the project, which had begun in earnest all the way back in 2006, had fallen woefully behind over the years. This put Square Enix in a tough spot, and the publisher made the call in 2010 to commission a new engine to accommodate the highly anticipated project, Luminous Studio. In the years that followed, Square Enix made the decision to shake up the development team making Versus 13. Square Enix president Yoichi Wada replaced director Tetsuya Nomura with Hajime Tabata, who then enacted radical changes to the game in order to get it back on track. This included the process of shifting development over from Crystal Tools to Luminous Studio, as well as transitioning the project from the PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. After introducing the world to Luminous Studio in 2012, and after years of whispers and speculation about the fate of Versus 13, Square Enix arrived at E3 2013 with the new trailer that rebranded the project as Final Fantasy XV. That year would also mark the first time the public was made aware of both the shift to the new Luminous Studio engine and the change in directors. While Tabata and his team were hard at work finishing development on Final Fantasy XV, he still somehow managed to find another opportunity to show off the power of Luminous Studio during the 2015 Microsoft Build event. The demo, called Witch Chapter 0 Cry, brought us back to the world of Agni's Philosophy, and was meant to showcase what Square Enix's games would look like running on DirectX 12. The real-time demo showed a marked improvement in visual fidelity over what was previously seen in Agni's Philosophy. In November of 2016, Final Fantasy XV finally saw a worldwide release. It went on to become the biggest launch in the franchise, shipping 5 million units worldwide within the first 24 hours, securing profitability for the entire troubled development of the project. A PC port for Windows was released in early 2018, although, ironically, it did not support DirectX 12. As expected, Hajime Tabata fell into the good graces of Square Enix's executives for the impressive turnaround of Final Fantasy XV, as well as his earlier work on Final Fantasy Type 0 and Crisis Core for the PlayStation Portable. Shortly after being given the reins of Final Fantasy XV's development, he was selected to sit on a committee that oversaw all aspects of the Final Fantasy franchise, alongside Motomu Toriyama, director of the Final Fantasy XIII series, Yoshinori Kitase, longtime series producer, and Naoki Yoshida, producer and director of Final Fantasy XIV. After the success of Final Fantasy XV, Tabata was further rewarded in March of 2018 when he was given the reins of a new Square Enix subsidiary, Luminous Productions, which was given the task of creating new AAA games for a global audience using Luminous Studio. Tabata was also given the okay to bring many of the Final Fantasy XV team members to his new studio. According to current Square Enix president Yosuke Matsuda, allowing Tabata to recruit a team this way was a big deal because it was not common for Japanese developers to establish new studios using personnel from existing internal studios. With his team assembled, Tabata began work on his next project. In August of 2018, Tabata gave the public an update on the studio's first game. He revealed that Luminous Productions would not be working on a new entry in the Final Fantasy series, but rather a brand new IP. Additionally, Tabata revealed Luminous Studio would undergo a name change and become known as Luminous Engine, most likely to avoid being mistaken as the name of his new team. There obviously was speculation about what this new IP would be, and it should come as no surprise that Agni's philosophy would be referenced in these discussions. Given Tabata's optimistic remarks, it seemed as if things were going well for Luminous Productions. Unfortunately, bad news would strike in less than 3 months. In November 2018, Square Enix held a special program where they were expected to announce upcoming DLC plans for Final Fantasy XV as they approached the game's second anniversary. Yet, in the most unexpected fashion, Final Fantasy XV global brand director Akio Ofuji appeared alone to announce that not only was all future DLC being cancelled, but that director Hajime Tabata had already departed from Square Enix a few days earlier to form a new studio called JP Games. The announcement sent shockwaves through the industry and sparked concerns over the future of Luminous Productions. There was further indication that not all was well with the new studio. A day before announcing Tabata's departure, Square Enix reported an extraordinary loss in its fiscal report, which was attributed to one subsidiary, Luminous Productions. Square Enix stated this record loss was due in part as the result of a change in strategy for the division. It would now concentrate on large-scale, high-quality AAA games. This didn't seem to add up given the fact that the studio was originally created with the stated intent of making new AAA games. Furthermore, according to a report from Japanese website GameWatch, part of this massive loss is also attributed to Square Enix scrapping Tabata's project. Though his departure seemed abrupt, Tabata did share his reasons for leaving the studio. In regards to my next endeavors and near future, I have a project that I truly wish to solidify as my next challenge after Final Fantasy XV. For that reason, I have decided to leave my current position and start my own business in order to achieve my goal. As production of episode Ardent continues and Luminous Production works on new projects, I felt that it was time for me to hand over the torch to the next generation group of talented and trustworthy colleagues, and believe that they will create something amazing. This would seem like a devastating blow to the young studio, but Square Enix acted quickly to remedy the situation. Before the end of 2018, the publisher appointed Final Fantasy XV's lead programmer Takeshi Aramaki as the new head of the studio. In his first statement, Aramaki attempted to instill a sense of stability and confidence in his team by stating, "We are currently making steady progress on a brand new title. We cannot wait to show you, and we hope that you look forward to its reveal." A year later, in September 2019, Aramaki and current Square Enix president Yosuke Matsuda would give an interview updating everyone on the state of Luminous Productions and its current project. According to Aramaki, Luminous Productions, which now included 130 staff from Japan and abroad, was actively working on multiple projects. Additionally, the largest team in the studio was already hard at work on a next-gen AAA title that would also serve as a new IP. Aramaki added that he wanted to avoid some of the mistakes from Final Fantasy XV's development. Despite it getting back on track after the changing of the guard, it still suffered a few setbacks due to the desire to have it become the tentpole in a brand new universe of Final Fantasy media. Just like Fabula Nova Crystallis before it, it was an ambitious initiative, but it was a decision that ultimately impacted some aspects of Final Fantasy XV's release, like its narrative reliance on supplementary works. Thus, Aramaki revealed that his team wanted to focus on the game's development first and foremost before any talk of supporting it with additional projects. Furthermore, Aramaki and his team probably feel an immense amount of pressure to deliver a game that lives up to some rather high expectations, as Matsuda has expressed that he thinks it should stand alongside Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest in terms of sales, quality, and global appeal. This brings us to today, when we've now seen a glimpse of what is likely the same project Aramaki and his team have been hard at work on, Project Athia. We still don't know much about the upcoming game, though we recently got confirmation from Matsuda that it will feature an open world. At this point in time, it seems premature to speculate about possible connections to any other projects, including Agni's philosophy or the rumored Final Fantasy XVI. Although it probably doesn't have anything to do with Final Fantasy directly, given that it's been stated multiple times that Luminous Productions is trying to build a brand new IP. All that we can say at this point is that given the history of Luminous Productions, Luminous Engine, and the statements made about them, Square Enix harbors immense expectations for Project Athia. Hopefully we don't have to wait too long to get an update and an official title for this fascinating new game.